Hey, meaningful movers. Welcome back to Moving with Meaning, the podcast where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Krystal. In today's episode, let's talk about the mark we leave in this world and on others. But you know how it is and what we do. We need to set that theme, so let's go ahead and do that. The word of the day is residue. I think that when we meet people or visit places, there is a fragment of ourselves left behind. Maybe a good impression or perhaps not. Doesn't matter though. We gained something from that interaction. I wonder if that's the same for those who are no longer with us. Have they left a smattering of a memory or an unsaid sentiment? That's enough of me talking. How about we introduce our guest? There's no one better to do that than herself. Tina, why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you're going to share with us today?
Thank you so much for having me, Krystal. I really looked forward to this. My name is Tina Erwin, and I teach the living to help the dead. That's kind of my tagline. I am a person like a lot of people who discovered they had some level of psychic ability, and they figured out they were a ghost magnet. That didn't work really well. I was in the Navy for 20 years, and supposedly naval officers don't see ghosts. So it made things really difficult. How do you explain that? But I realized that the situation wasn't going to go away, and I really needed to learn how to deal with it in a compassionate and karmically correct way. I think that really would be the best way to describe all this. I worked for the submarine force for 20 years, and I retired and thought I was going to have a computer company because I designed software. And that was not what was really planned for me. So I eventually closed my company and just started studying metaphysics and learning how to help the dead because they weren't going to go away until I did something that helped them. And along the way, I heard a variety of stories. Some of the most poignant stories are those who have taken their own lives. You know, we certainly see a lot of suicide in the Navy. That's one of the topics we were going to talk about today was suicide. So that's just a little bit about me. I'm the author of 8 books. The 9th one is supposed to come out this month if I can ever get the last things done.
I know the feeling.
Well, it's 45 chapters, and recording 45 chapters it's a massive book.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that at another time. So yes, my hope today is to give your listeners a different view of suicide.
Okay. That definitely lays the groundwork for what we're going to talk about. Okay, I'm thinking of Ghost Whisperer. As you were talking about that, I'm like, Jennifer Love Hewitt. I mean, I'm really remembering that. And I was looking at that TV show and I'm like, man, that has got to be kind of freaky to have like these dead people be popping up all around. Like, how do you know who's dead and who not? And all that kind of stuff. What was that experience for you?
When you're in the Navy and a crew member's relative dies, if you're an officer or you're in charge, you have to sit the person down and tell them that their grandfather died or their brother died or their mom died. And you have that experience of facing a person at the worst moment of their life when someone they love dearly has died. And you have to be super kind about it. I didn't know I was going to have to do that. I was at a cocktail party at an admiral's house with the chief of naval operations, and this ghost would not leave me alone. I thought I was going to go nuts. I'm all in my special uniform and look really cool. I did hair and makeup. I looked amazing. And I didn't know what to do with this ghost. And I knew it was a guy. I didn't know why he was with me. At first, my husband was at sea. I'm thinking to myself, is something wrong? You know, you go through the checklist. I could not figure it out. And I didn't know how to help this guy in 1977, which is when this happened. And the next day, we get a Red Cross message that said that, you know, this sailor's grandfather had died. So I called him in. And all of a sudden, I could feel his grandfather standing next to me. That was the ghost. He didn't want to hurt me. He was heartbroken. He wouldn't get to see his grandson again. And so I sat there and I told my sailor and this man's grandson that he had in fact died. And I was so sorry. You know, guys are really stoic, but this guy started crying. He said, my grandfather raised me. I loved him so much. So the ghost got to see and feel the grief of the living. And there was a really powerful lesson. I think we get presented with these lessons, and if we embrace them, I think it's really, really powerful. After that, it was like, go super highway. Yeah. And I ended up many, many times with people who had taken their own life.
A lot of people. How do you know? They telling you, or this is a feeling?
Well, you have to remember, as you develop your psychic ability and you grow with the connection to the divine, to God. I don't connect with spirit because that can be a whole host of actors.
Yeah.
I have a team I connect with, and I perform due diligence when I make the connection. As I'm beginning to make my connections, I can see these ghosts and the condition in which they died. So if someone hung themselves, you see that. If they've got a bullet wound in them, you see that. They drowned, you're going to see that and you're going to feel it.
Oh, okay.
It's a very challenging thing. The people die of a staggering number of ways. If we can get past that and look at it, it's a real challenge. And every single one of them told me they were sorry. They all thought it was going to be better when they died. And it wasn't any better. And they didn't feel any better. They were just as miserable dead as they were alive.
That's a good perspective to give, for sure.
It's a huge perspective to have. You know, at first I just didn't know how to help them. I learned over a period of time, a series of very complicated events. I learned how to remote view.
Oh.
You know, I went from just sort of seeing and sensing them to being able to see a whole lot more in a whole lot of ways.
Oh my gosh.
And when that happened and I could see them, then I started to bring in an angel, and I would ask an angel to wrap a golden shawl around that soul because they're filled with this darkness of despair. Because when you take your own life, your frequency is at the lowest of the possible lows because it's violence against oneself. You have violence against yourself. Violence against another person is the next level up.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So that's more important to yourself.
Yes, if you're killing yourself.
Okay.
And people do it through a variety of methods, whether it's alcohol or drugs, which is slower suicide. You're destroying yourself.
That's another good perspective too.
It's a very different perspective.
Yeah.
And each of them told me that they were sorry. They were in agony over the grief of their families, and they were standing around their family members. They wanted to be there. So I want to give this really, really important perspective, which is why it's super important to cross over a ghost, especially someone who took their own life. That person who's standing next to you, or your son, or your husband, or whatever, the living person is in resonance with the person who took their own life. This is why many people think suicide is contagious. It's not. It's a resonance issue. When you're grieving, when you're in shock, your personal frequency drops. Now you become vulnerable to the energy of suicide. You spoke about residue. I call it predecessor energy, and we leave it everywhere. It was a really good opening statement that you made because it ties in directly. So you have this resonance, this energy. It's a dark, destructive energy that suicide is carrying. Even if you love this person, the energy that's in them is dark and depressing. And consequently, they're spewing it to everybody around them. In fact, there was, one client who had 17 family members take their own lives.
17?
17. They were all with her, and she was having suicidal ideation. She was thinking about it. All 17 were crossed over, and she no longer wanted to kill herself. Now think about how powerful that is.
Right.
And people think, well, when you take your own life, God's going to punish you and you're going to hell. That is a lie. Do not believe it. God is not going to judge someone who is in deep despair. They're going to be loved and embraced. That's why I wrote the Crossing Over Prayer book. And in the Crossing Over Prayer book, the second prayer in this book is the compassion prayer for suicide.
Oh.
And I have the healing prayer after suicide for people who still want to pray. I had a client whose 17-year-old son took his own life. And she said, can you cross my son over? I've listened to your podcast. And I said, I can certainly do that. But it's going to be a lot more powerful if you do it.
Whoa. So wait a minute. We have the power to cross over. Like we can do it. We don't need a medium or anyone like that to do it for us.
Anyone can cross over the dead.
No, I ain't know that. Okay.
You don't need a medium. You don't need permission.
Tell me about crossing over. What is that? And what's the process?
The process is actually extremely simple. When you encounter a ghost, it doesn't matter how they died. At the end of the day, it is irrelevant, the cause of death.
Mm-hmm.
And you really see this in hospitals. If you're psychic and you enter a hospital, you're going to be bombarded.
Oh, I bet. I would assume. Mm-hmm.
If you encounter a ghost, simply say the crossing over prayer. And it's on ghosthelpers.com. It's on tinaerwin.com. It's in a variety of videos. It's in the Crossing Over Prayer book. You can just read the prayer on the websites. Or there are videos of me saying the prayer if you don't feel like you want to do this yourself. And you say this prayer in the privacy of your own grief, and you cross that soul over. Because what happens when you die, you exit the body. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. We're going back to basic physics.
Mm-hmm.
The energy that's you leaves the body. The body actually loses weight at death because the energy of the soul leaves. And it goes from the third dimension of time and space and gravity and moves to the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension is like this location that's a step up transformer that gets you to the heaven world, because you're at the whatever frequency you were when you died. For most people, the light comes. They see this beautiful light and they move into this light and they are welcomed with this fabulous, incredible light. But a lot of people don't feel worthy because they took their own life, or they were born in sin and died in sin, and they tell me God couldn't love them, which is not true. God does love them. When all this happens, then that person lingers in the fourth dimension, and there's no one to ask. They don't know what to do. They were not prepared for what happens after death. And churches don't prepare people for after death. The Tibetans do, but really no one else. No other faith that I know of tells you what happens when you take your last breath. And people ask me, what's going to happen when I die? And that's why we're having this discussion. It's going to happen to all of us, hopefully very peacefully, where they're in this lost and lonely place. And when you say the crossing over prayer, what you're doing is you're bringing in angels to surround them. You're bringing in the light for them, whether they think they're worthy or not. Big issue. I don't care whether you're worthy. That's not up to me to judge you.
Yeah.
You're not mine to judge. There's no prejudice. I cross over murderers because I don't want them haunting the living. It doesn't matter who you are. I can't judge this person. I ask that God take them, that these angels cross them over into the light of the divine so that they can receive all the spiritual and emotional healing that their body needs for whatever reason that they died or whatever traumas they experienced in life. Some people lead horrendously difficult lives, and they need this healing. People think, you might go to heaven and you sit on a cloud. Oh, no. You sit down with counselors of divine wisdom. They review with you the life you just led. They help you understand the hardships. They help you understand that difficult parent or why you died in the way that you did. Then you are sent to all these healing centers. And then you can be sent to centers if you want to know about something or you want to expand on a skill. Maybe you're a singer, maybe you're a musician or a mathematician or a botanist. I don't know. Whatever you are, there are schools in the heaven world that you can embrace. It's a very, very busy place with a staggering population of amazing beings. It's a place to really look forward to going.
I mean, I do.
Important, because a person who doesn't fear death leads a very different life.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. Why do spirits stick around? Like, why do they get stuck here?
Some of them have no idea they're dead. That's a problem.
Oh.
They don't understand why you're so rude and won't respond to them.
Really?
Yes, you certainly see that at accident sites. You see it on battlefields. I cleared a battlefield in Virginia, and there were British and American soldiers in Yorktown, Virginia. And I was talking to this British soldier, and he was furious. And he says, when is this war going to end? Why doesn't Cornwallis surrender? And on and on and on. And I said, well, the war ended several hundred years ago. Really. He says, I've been standing here all this time. Oh, that's blood? I didn't even see the blood. It was a red coat. Oh, you kidding me? I've been standing here shooting, and I've been dead all this time. It was just kind of a comical conversation in the irony of it. And he says, well, tell me what happened. Did Cornwallis ever surrender? Imagine having that conversation with someone who just now gets to understand that they died.
Yeah.
This is why when someone burns a little sage, which is, by the way, worthless, to remove the dead, that frequency isn't powerful enough to go through predecessor energy of several hundred years ago.
Why is burning sage like a big thing?
Because once somebody said that this works, then everybody said it works, but it doesn't.
Oh, okay. Just a rumor and then...
It's just one of these things. And I think because Native Americans used it, but Native Americans used it in ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't use it to remove the dead. There's another element here. When you want to clear a space, you're not going to use sage. You're going to use frankincense and myrrh resins. Well, first of all, you're going to use dragon's blood, and then you're going to really clean it up with frankincense and myrrh and benzoin. I have some books that talk about this. And when you use those, think about the gifts to the Christ child were not sage, although the Middle East cooks certainly use sage. They don't burn it to clear a space. That's why they use frankincense.
Okay.
And so Native Americans had a relationship with the divine in their own concepts. They honored their dead, and the dead understood that you go to, the great beyond. They understood that. A lot of Native cultures all over the world knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some cultures, specifically the Europeans and the people in the Mediterranean, that did not. I spent a lot of time in Monument Valley. It's like there's no ghost there because the Navajo and the Hopi know what to do. I mean, and that's prehistoric. There are dinosaur tracks and dinosaur eggs and bones all through that area. You talk about predecessor energy, it goes back a really long way. So when you're helping someone who took their own life, you may be grieving. But when you cross that soul over and don't hold them or keep them with you, because when you keep someone with you, it keeps you in a deeper state of grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you cross them over, it lifts your grief because you can't tell the difference between your grief and their grief. When you cross them over, you're only dealing with your own grief.
Oh, that's interesting. You don't think you're compounding your grief when you're trying to hold on to someone?
You are compounding it because there's this feeling of when you love someone, it is normal human reaction to want to hold on.
Mm-hmm.
When you're holding on, you're not really holding on to anything. You're holding on to the memories. And whether the person is crossed over or they're next to you, all you're really holding on to are the memories. When you let them go to the heaven world, you're still going to send them your love. You're still going to hold on to every memory, every photograph, every precious moment that you had with them. That is going to end. But now you know where they are. You feel helpless when someone's died. Stop feeling helpless. Do something. Cross them over. And then this mom in South Dakota crossed her son over, and she could not believe how much darkness was lifted from her. I mean, I haven't had this experience of a loved one taking their own life. I would never say, oh, I know how you feel. I don't know how you feel. That has not been my experience. My experience is compassionate helping, but it wasn't a loved one who took their life. I've had loved ones die, and I know what that's like. And so she asked me this question. She said, I want to feel like I'm really, really helping him even after he has died. What can I do? She said, can you write a prayer for me so that I can send him my prayers in the heaven world and he'll feel my love? And so I did that. This prayer is called the Healing Prayer After Suicide.
Oh, okay.
And she sends that prayer every night. She said, I feel better. It's like, you don't know how this helped my grief. And I said, well, I have an idea, because it's all about the energy of what you're doing. And you're doing something really positive instead of the depths of despair that constitute grief. And when that happened, she began to feel emotionally stronger and stronger. I'm careful with my words. Did she feel better? It sounds like you feel better. Your loved one's dead. No, she felt stronger. She missed him. She felt sad that he took his life. And then I pointed something else out to her. Many people who take their own life are repeating a pattern of lifetimes. They've taken their own life, life after life after life. I had a client. We did so many past life regressions, and she killed herself in every single one.
What?
Yeah. Every single life, the same person was in her life, and he died. And she would kill herself with anywhere between 2 weeks to 6 hours after he died.
Oh
One
my
time it was her
God.
son, one time it was her husband, one time it was her father or nephew, or it didn't matter what the relationship was. She just couldn't bear to live without him.
Wow.
So karmically, she wasn't learning the lessons that were meant to be learned.
Hmm. So does she come back?
Yes, she did come back, and she came to me for a different reason. But we discovered this after we had worked for a while, several months. She felt like she was in a good place, and she didn't need me anymore. And she let me know she'd met this Marine pilot, and they were in love, and it was all this wonderful stuff. And she was so crazy about him, and they were engaged to be married. And then I saw on the news that his jet crashed in Arizona. I saw that it
Mm.
crashed, and I felt instantaneously that that was her fiance, and it was. And I
Oh.
called her and I said, do we need to work together, or how are you doing? And she said, I know he is the one. She said, I can feel that urge come over me. I know he's the one who's died every life, and I'm working through it. She felt that I understood the dynamic of what she was feeling.
Right. Right.
She was able to use all the tools that we had worked on to help herself stay with the living and live out a whole life without him. And every day that she lived was a triumph. So a year after he died, I got a wedding invitation from her. She was getting married to a great guy. So I called her and I said, I'm really honored to receive your wedding invitation, but I don't know anyone. And she said, you have to remember something. You're the only person on earth that knows what it means that I have lived long enough to remarry.
Mm-hmm.
You are the only one who understands that I'm still living and that this is a triumph for me.
Yeah.
So she was married several months, and then we had lunch. And I said, how are you doing? She said, it's hard. I married a really good guy. He's a great guy.
Mm.
And I love him in my way, but it isn't the same. But I know that if I live out this whole life and I honor my life and I honor his death,
Mm-hmm.
by living a whole life, that maybe in another life we'll get to have a whole life together.
That's good.
It's remarkable to be able to see this with the perspective of time,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. It's constant. And for us, it's just always forward, right? And it's this continuum. And so when you go into a different aspect of that, yeah, man, I'm just thinking a whole bunch of stuff right now. Oh my goodness.
You see the ramifications of that concept?
Of course.
It opens mental doorways, emotional, spiritual doorways of the grace
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity that we're offered to work through these things and to grow. I mean, I think that is a beautiful concept.
Yeah. You've really given meaning to living life, like you said, honoring those who have passed. You do that by living. You do that by continuing.
For some people, it takes a lot of courage to live every day.
It does. Yes. Agree. And I think that's something that we should always recognize. Living ain't easy, but it's a milestone. Every day. Celebrate it.
Celebrate it.
I want to ask one last question to you before we go. You spoke a lot about faith, and just in my faith, for sure, it's one of those things where it's like, don't talk to no dead, don't talk to the mediums, right? That's outside of our world. Tell me how this works within the faith community.
Well, in the faith community, the faith is a community.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these different communities have different names or labels. I was in Page, Arizona, and you drive down the main street, and there are 13 churches, one right next to the other. There's a synagogue, and there's Mormon and Methodist and Catholic, and there's 13 of them. I was jaw dropped, all right next to each other.
Right.
And with the perspective of it was riveting for me. And every single one of them believes in one God. There's not a Methodist or an Episcopalian or a Lutheran God. At the end of the day, there is God.
Mm-hmm.
Virtually every faith acknowledges the presence and the fact that Christ walked the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Some faiths embraced the concept of Christ as a beloved master who walked this earth and demonstrated the concepts of peace and loving kindness, but far more than that. the practical day-to-day way of running society through good work and being honest and moral values. Even the Quran recorded that Christ was here, and they acknowledged that he was a remarkable being. And so I look at every faith as being under God. I look at the concepts of Christ and the light of Christ consciousness as being incredibly important. You don't need to be in a building of wood and stone. You don't need a dogma. You don't need a book to connect to God. You only need the love in your heart and a personal, private, conscious connection to God. I've crossed over ministers and pastors, crossed over atheists and agnostics. They're so surprised.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I've crossed over children and babies, aborted babies, miscarried babies.
Wow.
Crossed over battlefields of people, ships of drowned souls. I've crossed over people on Nazi submarines.
Wow.
It is irrelevant to me who you are or how you died. In the sight of God, all people are welcome, no matter the heinous crimes you have committed. In our Father's house are many mansions, and you are placed in the heaven world based on your frequency and the karma you bring with you. To be blunt, let's look at Franklin Graham for Samaritan's Purse. I admit it, I have been donating to Samaritan's Purse for a very, very long time because they are there. And that goodness is incredibly impressive to me, that honesty. And so when you look at someone who's not seeking accolades, they're just in the trenches doing the work. That EMT, that emergency room doctor, that dad who's working to bring home something, that single mom, that person who has lifted themselves up and made a life, that person who's hosting a podcast to share information with other people so that they might feel better. All of those people have a frequency and they're doing wonderful things. When they get crossed over, they get to see and feel this love that is so, I've seen the light an uncountable number of times. It's really hard not to want to just go with them.
Yeah.
That's just not my job. My job is to be here to help and to awaken people to the love that is there. I've had many, many people say to me, well, you're not Christian. I can still be your friend, but you're not Christian. I've had that said to me over and over and over. And I just smile because I honestly don't know what that means. I have a deep and abiding love for Christ. I don't use the same terminology. But I also feel that there have been beings who have walked the earth that none of us even know about, who are here and who were helpful and who loved and who did good work. We should not categorize someone as you are or you aren't. I think that when you categorize people and you separate yourself, I'm Christian and you're not, it's like you want to feel special.
Yeah.
Or if someone says I'm Christian, it's supposed to be a designation, but I really only care about your character. I don't care about the labels.
Yeah.
So if I say I'm a naval officer and you're not, well, that's true because I did that. And that's a designation, or someone's a doctor and I'm not, or a lawyer and I'm not. Okay, those are designations. But if you're a good person, isn't that all that matters? And I honestly feel that if you never heard of this guy Christ and you died, that God is still going to welcome you. Having crossed them over and brought in angels, there's not a single time an angel refused to help. Not one time. No matter how vicious. I crossed over this horrific serial killer from the early 1700s who killed, I think, at least 10 children and several adults. I brought in angels for him and spiritual police and had him escorted to the correct realm of the heaven world. Because when you reincarnate from the fourth dimension, you come back and bits and pieces of your soul are shaved off and you no longer have the humanity necessary to fully embrace life.
That's interesting.
And when you cross someone over, their soul is restored. And you know how I know that? Because you should question me. How do you know that? And the answer is the 23rd Psalm. Lo, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I'm sorry, what is that place? That's the fourth dimension. For thou art with me, meaning you can ask for God to be with you. Wink, wink. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. And it goes on and on. He restoreth my soul. Think about that statement.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone listening should go back and fully read the 23rd Psalm. You are not going to have your soul restored unless you've crossed over. So if you are a serial killer and there's nothing of your humanity left, and some humble psychic crosses you over, you still carry the karma of what you've done with you. But now you're on a path to restore your soul. And perhaps in the next life, you will not commit murder.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that concept. Think about the power that I'm offering anyone listening to cross over people, whether you know them or not. You don't have to hear their story. Just help them.
And I think that's just a perfect segue. Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what. This has been a great conversation. I mean, and I know we can keep going. I know, because I have more questions. But I do want to ask, do you have any golden nuggets that you want to leave the people with?
If you have someone who you love who has died, find the courage within yourself to locate the crossing over prayer on ghosthelpers.com and either play the prayer or say the prayer yourself. Some people find a quiet place. It is the greatest service you can do for someone who has died. And this help is absolutely the compassion you will want for yourself.
That's so sweet. Thank you. I truly hope that you guys really reflect on that last tidbit there, because I think it's going to have more meaning than just the 30 seconds you said it. So take that with y'all for the rest of the day, and hopefully to remind yourself of the beauty of living and life is. That's the episode today. I know this is a different approach to dealing with grief and the unknowns that plague us endlessly. I think there is something to truly being present to those who are around us. Even that's difficult when we are trying to get our own selves pieced together. No one said you had to build a bridge in a single day. It takes placing all the right pieces in the right place at the right time. They do say the sum of the parts are more than the whole. That's why I appreciate Tina for sharing her story and experiences to help others find solace in the loss of loved ones. What part of Tina's story has that noodle of yours buzzing? Is there something remaining that keeps gnawing at you from a recent passing of a loved one? I'll tell you what, if you are feeling adventurous, share your thoughts and see where that takes you. I love it all, and so will someone else. Before I let you go, Tina, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources or reach out to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Tina Erwin. You can reach me at ghosthelpers.com or tinaerwin.com. There's a contact page there, and there are many prayers on those websites that are absolutely free to use. All the books that I have written are on that website too, if you wanted to check those out. And Krystal, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to share these thoughts, and perhaps, even if we only help one person today, for that person, this could be life-changing.
And that's all we care about. I do want to say thank you for your service. You are a retired naval commander, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll make sure to include all of Tina's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website's resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving With Meaning the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. I am on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Please share, like, repost, and follow. Tag someone. We are creating a community. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82 and on Pinterest at Arthur KB Clark. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble in TikTok at Krystal B. Clark. My Etsy store has some handy dandy digital downloads. Lastly, run over there to my YouTube channel and have a look or two. Links are in the episode. Alrighty, I'm Krystal on Moving With Meaning the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.